This short video is the first in a new series where I will be showing you my plants. Each video will be dedicated to one specific strain. I will tell you about its characteristics, plus a bit of background about its history when that is known. Francis is one of my most beautiful plants. It can grow quite fat, up to a width of about 5 inches, which is about 12.5 centimeters. It has great looks, beautiful shapes, and is one of the bluest Pachanois I've come across. A lot of San Pedros will turn to a blue color when they grow in the shade, but Francis remains bluish even when it is in full sun. I have several large cuttings of Francis. The ones you see now are in full sun all day long on my south-facing terrace. They retain quite a lot of bluishness, in spite of being exposed all day to unfiltered Spanish sun. Yes, you heard that right, unfiltered. This year, I've had a lot of flowers on my cacti, probably due to a very dry winter. Because of that, I've had to remove the green filtering material that was previously on them so that the flowers and fruits don't get ripped by the fabric when there is wind. As a result, many of my San Pedros have yellowed quite a bit, but Francis has remained fairly blue. And by the way, don't worry about the yellowing on my other San Pedros. It is mild and hasn't had the time to set in permanently, so they will eventually revert to their natural color. Here you can see another south-facing Francis that has had full day sun exposure throughout the entire growing season, and as you can see, the color remains bluish. Now that we've had a look at the Francis plants that are on my south-facing terrace, let's take a look at those that are on my back terrace, which is north-facing. I live on the last floor of an apartment building. The roof is right above my apartment, and therefore, my building does not hide the sun all day long, as that occurs with many north-facing terraces. During the warmer months, the sun starts hitting the furthest end of the terrace early in the morning, and by the early afternoon, it has reached the entire terrace. So these Francis plants received unfiltered sun for the entire afternoon until the sun sets, and remained very, very blue. I have named this clone after a cactus collector who lives by himself on a really huge piece of land near Saint-Tropez, on the French Riviera, where he's built his house all by himself in traditional Provençal style using local stones like the one you can see on this image. Francis does not have television or internet and lives a very simple life which he dedicates entirely to his plants, and he has so many of them. He got his first peyote in the mid-1940s. Yes, just at the end of World War II. And in nearly 8 decades, he has built an incredible collection of cacti and rare plants. He has amazing stories about collecting cacti in the 1940s, 50s, and 60s. And I learned a lot from him. Not just cultivation tips, but also what it was like collecting these plants way back then. Francis is a good friend with my mum, as they used to be neighbors. It's my mum who introduced me to him, and after we met a few times, Francis saw how interested I was in this bluish San Pedro, and decided to give me pretty much everything he had of that strain. That was so kind of him. He only kept a couple of cuttings for himself. And by the way, these San Pedros were south-facing and received sun all day. Once again, you can see they remain fairly blue. I still have most of these cuttings, and they have grown beautifully. Unfortunately, at some point I had to sell some of them, as I was moving from an apartment with a big terrace to another one with only a balcony, and space was a problem. Many of my plants had to be put in dark storage for over 6 months, and some of the Francis cuttings were sold to an Italian couple who organized ceremonies. They told me that they also planned to grow some of them in order to have a forever supply. So maybe there are some Francis plants growing somewhere in Italy as well. And what about this large adult San Pedro that you see now on the screen? Well, once, as I was visiting my parents near Saint-Tropez, we went to a town nearby to eat bouillabaisse on the seafront. If you don't know what bouillabaisse is, it is a delicious traditional fish stew from the French Riviera. I don't eat meat, but I do eat fish from time to time, especially when it tastes as great as that. And as we were walking back from the restaurant, I spotted this San Pedro behind the gate. I believe this is the same strain as I got from Francis. This plant is south-facing and handling pretty well the large amount of sun it's getting. I was able to talk to the owners, a very nice older couple who showed me an old photo of the same San Pedro from the 1960s, and back then it was just as big as it is now, which makes me wonder when it was planted. A long time ago for sure. Many of the Trichocereus plants that are in Spain and the south of France were brought back from South America over 100 years ago. Already back then, there were a lot of people into these plants, and at some point in the future, I will probably dedicate a video to these early times. Interestingly enough, the owners of this plant knew Francis, the cactus collector, who apparently came a few times over the years to pick up fallen arms. So I think this is where my cuttings originate from. Francis himself might have told me where he got them from, but now I cannot remember as that was many years ago. I believe Francis, the strain, not the person, is a clone, which means that all the examples that you can find are cuttings from the same original plant, possibly that very large one that you can see here. For that reason, you will not find pure Francis seeds. If you were to purchase two separate cuttings of Francis from two different sources, they could not have babies together, because even though they have been separated by distance and time, they are still parts of the same original plant grown from one single seed, and San Pedros are not self-fertile. But I do produce a lot of crosses using Francis, so you can still get seeds with Francis genetics, it just won't be 100% Francis, which is fine because it's fun to mix genetics. The cacti grown from these seeds should also have a bluish color, especially if Francis is the mum, as the genes of the mum always dominate over the dad. And if the other parent also happens to have a bluish tone, then you can expect a very blue plant. This year, for instance, I was able to cross Francis with two other blue strains of Pachanoi, which are Colosso and Costa. So both of these crosses are highly recommended if you're looking for a blue Pachanoi. If you grow these seeds, just bear in mind that seedlings are never bluish, and it's only when the plant is a few years old that it develops its final color. Also worth noting, I was recently able to cross Francis with a Peruvian torch, Peruvianus carbonell, so that should also give some very bluish plants, if you don't mind spines. This year's harvest is now completed, and I'm happy to say I have dozens of new varieties of seeds available, starring Francis, but also many other cool strains and species. If you want to receive a list of what I have available, feel free to drop me an email mentioning your country, and I will reply with information, photos and prices. You can find my email address in the description of this video, but I will also let it appear now on the screen. It's sanpedromastery@protonmail.com. I hope you enjoyed this video. There will be many more videos about all the different strains and species that I have, so stay tuned for similar videos and subscribe if you have not done that already. All for now, ciao ciao.